Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the DM Shower Thoughts, the show where we talk about our shower thoughts and 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons, as well as other tabletop scenarios and how to become your best self in gaming and through gaming. Haha! I changed the slogan for some reason. My name is Adamus.
I'm John.
And I'm Ian.
Hi, Ian. All right, so this is we're going to go a little bit backwards. We're treating ourselves to a part 2, even though this is officially episode 88. So last episode on Dragon Ball Z, we started a very cool discussion, and then we had just enough time to go through the first of subclasses part 3, which was the Artificer Armorer. And so we're actually going to pick up right where we left off with the other two subclass options, which was the Circle of the Stars Druid, as well as the Fey Wanderer Ranger. Any initial thoughts before I jump right into that?
I'm super hyped for Fey Wanderer just because I like the Fey, and it's such a really cool topic. So I'm just interested to see how they're going to make this work into the like the lore of the Feywild and other things like that. So,
okay, cool, awesome. All right, so awesome possum. Let's talk about Druid. At second level, a Druid gains the Druid Circle feature of Circle of the Stars. An ancient lineage, the Circle of Stars allows Druids to draw on the power of starlight. That's cool. So at second level, you gain Star Map. You created a star map as part of your study of the heavens. The map is a tiny object and can serve as a spell casting focus for your druid spells. You decide what form the object takes, or you can determine what it is by rolling on the star map table, like a scroll, a stone tablet, a speckled owlbear hide, and some other cool ideas. If you lose your map, you can perform a 1-hour ritual, 1-hour ceremony, whatever you want, to magically create a replacement. The ceremony can be performed during a short or long rest, and it destroys the previous map. You can cast the augury and guiding bolt spells without expending a spell slot and without preparing the spell, provided you use the star map as the spellcasting focus. You can cast a spell from the map in this way a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. So if you have a 20 wisdom, you've got 5 guiding bolts at your disposal?
Yeah, or a combination of 5 guiding bolts and auguries.
Yeah.
This is a really meaty ability, especially for a second level character. Augury, I have a lot of thoughts on divination. I think divination is the player's best friend and the DM's worst enemy. I think that having to come up with the divination or trying to foresee into the future, knowing that your players can change it at any time, I think that can be tough for a DM. And a lot of times it takes control away from the DM when to reveal certain dramatic information, which can make the DM feel like they've lost control or lost momentum. But to me as a player, I find divination extremely empowering, especially if I'm playing a character that's very strategic or really trying to use every tool at their disposal to try to research something, right? I find that and as a DM, if you know that there's a player that's Circle of Stars, expect them to use the augury and divination and almost like add that to a little bit of your prep. So like commune with nature is like the perfect example I keep, because that's part of my druid's like set, right? It's one of his circle spells. So like it's one of those things where I'm going to commune with nature as often as I can. Yeah. So like it really helps when you have that thing like ready to go. And if I surprise you with it, then that's like, all right, everyone take a break real quick. Everyone go to the bathroom, grab snacks because I need to write down this stuff.
Yeah.
But as a player, it really does. It's a very empowering thing to have that information at your disposal.
And I've actually now finally got the message from Karama that anytime I'm running a Night Owls that I know Karama is in the party, I will have a running list of this creature is in play. This creature is this delineation of this creature is an otherworldly presence or influence. This creature is these plants, this thing nearby. How would the trees respond if Karama spoke to the trees? And how would the birds respond? What would they say? And it's an extra dialogue tree of options that now has a
like
running
Disney princess
document next to me.
for the animals to speak to me.
At this point, John just starts singing whenever he casts the spell, pull an aerial. This is a very, very beastly spell, and I like the theming of specifically having a star map that you can draw that wisdom from. I like the idea too that you have there's a role playing option, like a lore option, and a battle option. So you can use that sort of guidance to cast, guiding bolt, which it's kind of cool to have that spell as a modifier resource instead of a spell slot resource, because often when I'm running clerics, it just isn't. It doesn't seem viable to use guiding bolt when bless works. It doesn't seem useful. So guiding bolt often gets pushed to the wayside in favor of more buffing spells, or like the spiritual weapon and then a cantrip and then bless after that, and just buff the party and give them some power. Those are usually the 1-2 punches that we go toward. But this is a druid with guiding bolt.
So I'm going to interject real quick. So I've been playing a Twilight Cleric in one of the games, and we just hit level 7. So I started as a level 5 character, and Cleric is it's slowly becoming much more of a favorite class than I initially gave it credit for, mostly because I'm actually playing it now. And I've seen so many people play it so ineffectively or inefficiently for so long that, finally getting my claws on it. So Guiding Bolt is one of those spells that, because it's a spell attack to hit, and it depends, its entire effectiveness is whether or not you can hit the creature's armor class. I totally agree that between levels like 1 and 2, there are much better ways to spend your limited first level spell slots.
Yes.
So something like Bless, or something like, I don't think Heroism is a cleric spell. I don't know. Healing Word, though, like a bonus action Healing Word can save a life. Gotta save a life. But with once you hit 3rd level, now you have, like you said, Adam, you've got a 2nd level spell slot to bonus action spiritual weapon, but the restriction is only on of like you need a cantrip and a bonus action is only for the first time you cast it.
Yeah.
So what I've been finding is my action economy usually looks like this, where actually Patrick's Bard has ended up being more the hard support, and I'm more of a pivot support as a cleric. So I can trust him with healing. He has Magical Secrets Healing Spirit, even though it's nerfed, still much more powerful than my piddly little Healing Word. Mm-hmm. So it usually ends up I bonus action spiritual weapon and then do a cantrip, but then the next turn I'm free now to Guiding Bolt. And because I have 4 first level spell slots, even though I'm consuming a resource, I have more of those resources to play with. Yeah. And the higher level in cleric you go, the higher level your Guiding Bolts can get, or the more play you have in casting those Guiding Bolt spells. So Guiding Bolt's ironic because even though it's a first level spell, I find that I don't even really use it until like 5th or 6th level cleric. So, but to have, like you said, to have Druid tie it to a modifier, it lends itself to use Guiding Bolt in a way because you're not consuming one of your precious Druid spell slots in order to do this try it attempt, Yes. So like I'm thinking of the amount of times I've had Karama Thornwhip because I got nothing else to do with my action. Right. But to be able to Guiding Bolt, that is insanely powerful, especially at 2nd level.
That was the main point. It's at 2nd level. So you're completely right. Whenever I run clerics are my favorite. But when you get in early game, in early game, Guiding Bolt is not usually an option for me because at that point, all of my hard supports are struggling to hit something, or we're not at the point yet until we have reckless attacks. We're really doing a lot more abilities that would grant us advantage, or getting equipment that's going to make sure that we hit more often. That's because I need to now make sure we have spiritual weapon at our disposal, and we have bless running so that they can hit. And as long as they're hitting, then we're okay. But I like that this you get at second level, and if you have a high wisdom, you have a lot of uses of guiding bolt and a lot of uses of augury that don't consume those precious spell slots at early game, which is great.
Yeah, and I was just going to mention that outside of using the subclass for PCs, my mind lately has been on a lot of NPCs, and I think that this would, I know we haven't completed the subclass yet, but I think this would be a really interesting kind of class to have an NPC as, because it's got this like level of mysticism where you like go and seek out this star map druid, and they will tell you like how to go about something, you know. And I just think this is going to be really interesting to start playing with in my games as well.
Yeah, no, actually, you mentioned a really like a real gateway of a topic, which is a lot of times with subclasses, you know, we talk about distinguishing mechanics from their flavor. So like if you really like the mechanics, you shouldn't be bound by the story that's prescribed by a subclass or an ability. However, the opposite can also be true now, where even if the mechanics are something you ignore, the story that's being told with this material is fodder for creating very interesting interactions and very interesting NPCs. So like I can imagine the fortune teller that we talked to in your kind of Strahd like game.
Yeah, the mini campaign.
I can see that being like a star druid, where you don't even you just discard the mechanics, but you're like, for story reasons, this druid looks upon the stars to really get their mumbo jumbo fortune teller. You know what I mean? So I think that's a really very, very good point.
This entire concept, a lot of the subclass options we've been seeing, I've been making these little notes here and there for Grey Owl's book too, and how to tie like this particular subclass into, you know, the shamans of a city world. Are they like the weather patterns? Are they the not so much the weather forecasters or anything like that? They're the Doppler, the Doppler gray owls. But to see how all these little critters can fit inside book 2, and I guess gets me very excited. So we have other second level abilities.
We do.
Also at second level, we gain Starry Form. You gain the ability to harness the constellation's power to alter your form. As an action, you can expend a use of your wild shape feature to take on a starry form rather than transforming into a beast. While in your starry form, you retain your game statistics, but your body takes on a luminous, star-like quality. Your joints glimmer like stars, and glowing lines connect them as on a star chart. This form sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. The form lasts for 10 minutes or until you're incapacitated. Whenever you assume your starry form, choose which of the following constellations glimmers on your body. Your choice gives you certain benefits while in the form. Chalice. A constellation of a life-giving goblet appears on you. Whenever you cast a spell using a spell slot that restores hit points to a creature, you or another creature within 30 feet of you can regain hit points equal to 1d8 plus half your level in this class. Archer. A constellation of an archer appears on you. You gain a bonus action that you can use to make a ranged spell attack, hurling a luminous arrow that targets a creature you can see within 60 feet of you. On a hit, the attack deals radiant damage equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. And Dragon. A constellation of a wise ancient dragon appears on you. When you make an intelligence or wisdom check or a constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, you can treat a roll of 9 or lower on the d20 as a 10 at second level.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. I haven't played a druid, so do druids have a damaging cantrip?
Yeah. Thorn whip.
Well,
That-
yeah, you got.
That and produce flame.
Yeah.
Are not a real blasty class, which is
Yeah.
kind of why I like them actually. So they're a very control-oriented class and a very support-heavy class. So the like distinguishing thing I found of like why I would play a druid instead of playing, say, like a wizard, which is also a kind of a control-y class, is that a lot of times druids will make their enemies worse at their job and make their allies better at their job, usually at the same time. Whereas as wizards have to work to get both those things to happen. But when a wizard makes someone worse at their job, they do a much better job at making them worse than their job, you know?
Yeah.
So with druid, the thing I really like about this is the fact that I'm kind of in this camp too, where wild shape is a neat mechanic, but not every druid is going to be flavored or have the story to actually utilize it. And finding another way to utilize your wild shape so that it more matches what your druid is all about, I'm for that. We had that in Circle of Spores druid, where like they could use a wild shape use to summon the mushrooms. For this, it's the starry form, and actually the imagery is Saint Seiya, which is why I'm pretty pumped about it. But but like for Karama, so my druid, he's basically a nature wizard. He's not someone that really like turns into animals. He did so in the first session mostly as a test, and I decided I didn't like it. So so if he were to have an option like this, that would actually be pretty exciting, where maybe he uses a use of his wild shape so that he could get an extra thorn whip or something like that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and I just the reason I asked was because of the archer feature there, where you get like this magic arrow thing, and I just like that idea, because whenever I look at druid and I look at my subclass options and things like that, I'm like, I don't know why I would really wild shape, at least not for my character that I would want for a druid. So, because I always want to like cast spells or something. And I don't think in wild shape you can't cast spells.
No, you can maintain concentration if you had already started a spell. So like if you cast Healing Spirit and then you wild shape, the Healing Spirit won't go away. But you don't get the ability to cast spells in your wild shape until 18th level. So it's almost very end of the game by the time you get access to that.
Yeah, so I just think that this gives you some good options if you're looking for, again, like you said, druid is very, supporty. This still gives you some options for like a damaging cantrip almost, when you wouldn't normally have one, or at least one that you might like, because this one's radiant damage, and I'm pretty sure Thorn Whip is like piercing or something.
And I appreciate that archer is a it doesn't count, I guess, as a cantrip. It is a ranged spell attack, but you're not casting a spell, and it's your bonus action. So you can archer and then cast a spell.
Exactly.
So there's a nice 1-2 punch.
Yeah, they mention it's a spell attack. Is just to clarify that it's magical, which is, so it does mean that the druid is calling upon magic to use this effect, but it's more of a rules clarification than anything else.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Just as a little aside, it seems like we're getting shower thoughts in the middle of these things. Is that idea of what features get ignored in certain classes as you move through different archetypes, and wild shape is a big one, unless you are Circle of the Moon, or if you're testing out my Circle of Fenrir right now. Wild shape is just not a thing for a lot of people, because they want to spend their time casting spells, maintaining their concentrations on things, having other effects in the battlefield that they wouldn't have a reason to turn into an animal, but they have the option. And if they are moon, especially, the idea of becoming an elemental around 10th level is really cool, especially if you don't have a bigger bruiser in the party yet. So it allows the druid to go, oh, we need to smash things, elemental time, and then they smash things. And when they get popped out of elemental form, they still have all their other spells.
The chalice is good too. That seems really good. The only thing that I was like not as excited about was the dragon one.
Okay.
I mean, the reason for me is just because like being able to treat the base roll as a 10 is really good, but like it wasn't what I was expecting. That's all. Like for the concept of dragon, that's the only thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I can understand that.
That dragon one, I don't know. I don't know if I would have that be a second level ability. I like it, but it's basically reliable talent on your concentration saves.
That's my thing. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. No,
Yeah. At early level, especially the damage you take, you can just be like, I'm in dragon form. Whatever. Yep. I maintain concentration.
If that were a 14th level ability, I would be more for it.
Right.
But the fact that it's like second level doesn't matter. That entangle ain't going down.
No, it's definitely strong. Yeah, it wasn't
because at second level you're not being dealt a lot of damage, so your concentration check is probably going to be about 10. And if you just take 10, okay, you maintain concentration. There it is.
Yeah. No, that's an excellent point. And I am partial to features like this that give you options to using a single use, that stick to having a committed role-playing function and a committed combat function, right? So like if dragon were like, you call upon the wisdom of a dragon, when you make an intelligence or wisdom check for the next minute, a 9 or lower counts as a 10. I get that. And then having the separate option, the archer being more the combat offensive option. I understand that. To give this hefty amount of, I don't know. Then again, it's like a barbarian's rage where you can really only do it twice per long rest. And if you're, depending on how you set up the game, they really only get 1 or 2 uses of it, and they still have to use an action to activate it. So,
yeah.
All right, maybe
we can see it in play and see if it's really broken. But
yeah, that with the 3 free guiding bolts at this level, I don't know. Yeah, I think it's having all of it, you know. So like some of it I'm okay with, but all of it is like,
I think this is probably going to be my next character that I cook up. I'm interested to try Druid out.
Try a circle of not circle, but yeah, circle of stars. Druid in book 2 there, Ian.
Maybe that's actually. I keep forgetting there's going to be a book 2, and then I'm like, oh yes.
You can actually start at the beginning.
Twilight cleric, so you and I can combine our Twilight starry forces.
Unity
both glitter too. Beautifully. So at 6th level, you gain Cosmic Omen. You learn to use your star map to divine the will of the cosmos. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can consult your star map for omens. When you do so, roll a d6. You gain one of the following possible omens based on whether you rolled an even number or an odd number on the d6. So 50% chance either way. Wheel for even. Whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and add the number rolled to the total. Whoa! Odd. Whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you makes an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, you can use your reaction to roll a d6 and subtract the number rolled from the total. I like to say creature, not ally or enemy, just creature. You can use this reaction a number of times equal to your wisdom modifier, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest.
I like it.
A little bonus bane or bless for what you want to do.
Isn't cutting words kind of like this in Bard?
Yeah, it is. The difference with cutting words is that the die is going to be bigger, and it's based off your bardic inspiration roll. The other thing is, though, because of that, you do get to choose whether you're going to use that bardic inspiration to buff or debuff. Whereas what I like about this is that it's random. It's, are you going to be a buffer today or a debuffer today?
Yeah.
So that's Yeah, I think that D&D can use a little bit more of randomized mechanics like this. Like, that's why people love Wild Soul Sorcerer. It's
Or
the
wild
trouble with
magic.
Wild
Wild
Soul
magic, yeah.
Sorcerer is there's rules as written, there isn't enough wild magic going on, which is why we always like circumstantially rule it.
Yeah.
But I like this, how there's an ability tied to randomness. I don't know.
Like Portent does. It's not the same thing as this, but it's in the same class of like magic, and I really like Portent. I like it when Adam's like, I replace that with an 18, and it's my attack roll, and I'm like, okay, thanks.
But those are two random numbers that I have to roll at the beginning of every after the long rest and go, well,
Yeah.
I guess I put those down. Let's see what I can use those for. And sometimes I roll like a 5 and a 4. It's like, well, that's for a saving throw on an enemy or something. That's someone else. I get to debuff this time.
The other thing is that this is a reaction, which is something that Druids don't get a lot of. Druids might get absorb elements, which is a reaction, but in terms of fleshing out their action economy, this is a nice thing to throw their way. Because having played enough different classes where the action economy is, in my opinion, not full enough, this is a nice thing to see, that they're looking at how the game is played versus how the game was designed to be played, you know?
Yeah, no, I really like that, especially as we get closer to the concept of 6th edition, and it's like, I'm interested to see how things may or may not change as well. So
I'm so uncomfortable with change.
So at 10th level, you are full of stars. While your starry form feature is active, you become partially incorporeal, giving you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
It's only partial. Lame.
It's only partially incorporeal.
Yeah.
Oh, darn.
I want to be completely immune to those types of damage.
Oh, yeah. Well, can't be too much barbarian.
Yeah.
Solar barbarian.
Yeah,
and
that would be interesting.
At 14th level, you gain your capstone for this class, which is Star Flare. Solar Flare. Your connection to the cosmos allows you to conjure brilliant starlight. As an action, you conjure a burst of light in a 30-foot radius sphere centered on a point you can see within 120 feet of you. You can immediately teleport each willing creature in the sphere to an unoccupied space within 30 feet of it. Each creature remaining in the sphere must succeed on a Constitution saving throw against your spell save DC or take 4d10 radiant damage and be blinded until the end of your next turn. Once you have used this action, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest or until you expend a spell slot of 5th level or higher to use it again.
Can you imagine the cinematic moment where your party is like just getting the crap kicked out of them, and you're just like, all right, that's enough, and then you just do this AoE like thunder step or something, or whatever it's called, mixed with a sunburst, and I just think it's really cool. It's like, all right, you win this round, but we'll be back, and then it's just boom, you're out of there.
It's a great way to get your allies the heck out of there, or at least away from the big bad, and then hopefully blind them. And this would be your getaway. Or they're blinded, and now you've created some space to maybe bring your allies up or help the cleric out, whatever you need to do. Just creating space to then drive home finish the fight.
So I see two alternative uses to this, which I think are they might be frustrating from a player perspective, but they would make great story moments. The first, like we were talking about, the NPC Star Druid. So like the party's getting the crap kicked out of them, and then this Star Druid shows up and bamps them out to save them, Mm-hmm. It might be frustrating because it's like, well, we didn't really have control over that situation, but it would be an interesting story moment to demonstrate, this is the threat that you're up against, The other way is you're kicking the crap out of a bad guy.
Yes.
And all of a sudden they bamf out and you all get blinded by the fact that he just bamps out that way. So it's got a built-in escape mechanism, which I think you can tell a lot of interesting stories that way.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just looking at the range of the teleport. It's
30 feet from the burst zone.
Yeah.
But still, I mean, that 30 feet is a nice, it's a nice bit of range to get yourself moving. And also, if they're blinded, you might have a better chance to run, especially if later you misty step.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I was just looking at the math of it. It is a 30-foot radius of the sphere, right? So then it's 30 feet outside of that radius. So that's an effective, if you're centering it on the enemy, then that's an effective 60 feet of like, get the heck out. And actually that's pretty good. I like this as a 14th level feature. Definitely really rewarding to use. I think.
Say you didn't get away fast enough, spend a spell slot of 5th or higher, and then use it again.
Yeah.
Try to blind him again.
That's the only thing that irks me about this ability, is that it is non-magical unless you spend the spell slot, and now it's magical. Yeah. So it's, if you were using it against, like, say, like a devil that has magic resistance, the first use, you can cut right through that. The second use, it has resistance. Yeah. And I definitely think it's one of those things that, you know, when we see the finalized version, it'll probably have language like you magically conjure a sunburst, so that way the uses are kind of aligned. And that's how I would do it if I were a DM, like, adjudicating for this class right now. Mm-hmm. But it is kind of like a funny oversight, you know, about, like, as you're kind of looking at it, right?
Yeah.
I can see that. Okay. I am very excited about this druidic circle. I think there's a lot of points of pivoting that we haven't seen in the druid yet. I like the star map, just makes me very, very excited. But having a couple different resources that are, again, tied to that wisdom modifier, adding yet more value to your wisdom in the game. And I love that Augury, Guiding Bolt, you have a combat option and a roleplay option. The Starry Form upgrades later. And the fact that you can still pick one of 3 options: healing, attack, or more roleplay, but also concentration. I really like that there's that luck element. We've been highly successful with a wild magic sorcerer in Feywild, because Feywild is the Feywild. Every time they cast a leveled spell, wild magic goes off. And even when they cast a cantrip, there's a 50% chance that wild magic will also go off. And it's created quite a fun and dynamic play. So they chose that, and they bought into that. I said, this is how it will be if you do this. And they went, yes, let's do it. And it's been hilarious and amazing. So there is a draw to that luck element. And I want to see more of that. It's okay to be random. It doesn't have to be balanced. It can be more random based. That's fine.
Yeah, and that's the big difference between D&D and Pathfinder right now. Is Pathfinder 2nd edition, from my understanding, there's even more reduced luck elements than in Pathfinder 1st edition. So I think it's really interesting the divergence that you're getting between the two systems. Because remember, part of the treadmill effect that you get from Pathfinder's design and 4th edition and 3rd edition's design is that when your armor class, when you don't have bounded accuracy, at one point there's an entire tier of enemies that become ineffective at fighting the party. So when you have a bounded accuracy design, and even a lowly goblin, if it nat 20s, can still hit an adventurer with a 28 armor class or whatever, now that it just changes kind of your approach to it. It actually calls for more planning because you're not sure if it's going to work or not. So it's kind of like restriction breeds creativity, which is why there was I did a live stream yesterday reading through Twitter's hot takes of D&D, and one person suggested, why don't all spellcasters just get all access to all spells? It's like, why don't you just have everyone do a spell list? And my first thing was like, well, now you're really taking away from the individuality of having 6 different casting classes. That the fact that now you have to think, do I want a bard level so I can get access to this spell, or a wizard level so I can get access to this? There's a puzzle to be solved there. And solving that puzzle is a game in and of itself. And that's why I like, you know, having clear rules, but also a pretty heavy luck element, you know, so you don't even know what's going to happen.
That changed the fundamental approach for Clover in Grey Owls with the pursuit of the thing called the Magnus. And the idea that the Magnus, as long as you do not cause harm through the use of magic, you now have access to all of the spell lists. And even that restriction, I thought, oh man, this could be really powerful if we're not careful. And no, the player went right with it, pivoted, and was like, no, I have to be very careful about what I choose to do and what I choose to fortify and what spells we use. And it made it so it made that whole thing, even though it felt like a lot of expansion, they also weren't all powerful. They have to follow those restrictions. Otherwise, the Magnus rejects them. And they can't have access to anything after that.
Yeah.
It's
nice.
I don't play with Clover, so I don't really know how that works. When you say as long as it doesn't cause harm, do you mean in mechanically, do you mean in terms of HP, or do you mean any sort of debuff?
They can't cause damage.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just damage. So if she poisons something, it's fine. But if she deals poison damage, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because the poison condition is not the same. Yeah, I get you. All right, that's cool. Anyways.
It's all good. But yeah, I like that. I like the way you said that. Restriction breeds creativity.
Yeah.
All right. So the next subclass we're looking at is for the Ranger. Yay, the Ranger. The Fey Wanderer. As a Fey Wanderer, you guard the border between the Feywild and the material plane, guiding the lost out of the Feywild, preventing dangerous Fey from damaging the material plane. I always like those subclass options and the ones who are the gatekeepers between worlds. And you have that extraplanar knowledge that some people just might not even know.
Yeah.
Fey Wanderers possess a preternatural blessing from a Fey ally or a place of Fey power. And you kind of choose what that blessing is or randomize it with a d6 roll. So at 3rd level, you gain Fey Wanderer magic. At 3rd level, Charm Person. 5th level, Misty Step. 9th level, Dispel Magic. 13th level, Banishment. And 17th level, Mislead. And correct me if I'm wrong, these are not usually spells that Rangers would have access to. I mean, definitively far away from the standard Ranger fare.
I mean, it's just interesting because I always like seeing Charm Person on an expanded spell list because I just feel like not enough people really try to use it because it has that risk of aggroing people, or at least letting them know that you tried to charm them. But I always like seeing it on the spell list because there's those situations where maybe you're talking to an important NPC, but they're not like, you know that they're not like super high in stats or something. So it's like, you can just, you think it's worth the risk of charming them. And I like to dispel magic and other things. Mislead, I have never seen it in play. So that's going to be really cool to see how this works out. That's all I was going to say about the spells. I do have a thing on just the subclass as a whole, just this concept of the Fey Wanderer, but we'll get to that.
I was curious with Dispel Magic. I get that because you're going to look at the nature of the arcana of the spell and then go, okay, that's how I break it. I'm curious why, and I'll probably think on it, I'm curious why they didn't add in Counterspell. I guess because usually, and this is where my thought train goes on this, but I can see why like you wouldn't want maybe a Ranger to have Counterspell. But Dispel Magic and Counterspell tend to go hand in hand in terms of the preparation for a standard caster's class. Like they're your caster suite. You want to have Dispel Magic and Counterspell if you have access to them. Just because you can shut down the effects and spell effects of your enemies. This is more like Dispel Magic is after the fact. Counterspell is immediate. And I can understand the need to maybe study what it is basically you're looking at and then dispel it. whereas Counterspell is nope, and that maybe would require a firmer grasp and training of Arcana as a whole.
You like phrased it as a question, so I was like wondering what the question was. But
I said I think on it more, and I thought on it more, and I think I answered myself.
Yeah. So and with Ranger, not all Ranger classes get an expanded spell list.
Yeah.
So when you get a Ranger class that does, it's interesting because it kind of points to the function of a Ranger within a party's composition. And what I like about this Ranger a lot is that it leans into the Ranger as being utility based, and you would pick a Ranger instead of a Scout Rogue because they have access to magical tricks that make them really good at specific things. So Mislead, I've seen it once, and it was in a Grey Owls game, and Dan's character Gavin used it, where he made an image of himself and he walked away, and he basically made it so like passerbys could basically attest to an alibi he had, because it's like, oh yeah, that guy was at the bar 20 minutes ago. He couldn't have been here. And I think that that this is more like, I see this class as a fairy investigator, and there's a lot of cool, I see it as like the grizzled detective that's so put up with the tomfoolery of fairies, but knows all of their tricks and has to reluctantly use them in order to crack the case, you know, which is, and I think
Jim Butcher stuff right there.
So this is the perfect spell list for a character like that. Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, that's actually the point for what I was going to say, which is I just, like, I can see why you would want to take this and, like, really embrace the Fae nature of this subclass, but I can also imagine you being, like, kind of cursed in a way by the Fae, where it's just, like, all this annoying Fae, you know, BS, and you're just, yeah, you're just, like, dealing with it because for some reason or another, the summer, whatever her name is, the summer queen likes you a lot, and she's like,
Tanya,
yeah, she's just like, here, have some of these, it'll be funny. And I just like that idea, especially since I play an Archfey Sorlock, so just the idea of not embracing that magic, just having this dissonance between your character, like intentional dissonance between your character and what they want, and the Fae being like, nah, here you go.
Yeah, I get that. So at third level, you gain Cunning Will. Your experience with the Fae has guarded your mind and sharpened your tongue. You have advantage on saving throws against being charmed or frightened. In addition, you gain proficiency in one of the following skills of your choice: Deception, Performance, or Persuasion. Which makes sense because you're working with Fae.
Yeah, and you're supposed to be a negotiator.
Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. Also, at third level, you gain Dreadful Strikes. You augment your attacks with mind-scarring magic drawn from the gloomy hollows of the unseelie Fae. You gain a bonus action that you can use to imbue the weapon or weapons you're currently holding with magic. Until the end of the turn, your weapons are magical, and they deal an extra 1d6 psychic damage on a hit. A creature can take this extra damage only once per turn. When you engage in two-weapon fighting, you can imbue your weapons as part of the same bonus action you use to make the attack.
So with Cunning Will, whenever you get a proficiency like that, you have to you have to start your building process knowing what subclass you have in mind. Because if you have a garbage charisma stat, then it won't matter. Like that proficiency bonus won't matter. Like, this isn't a subclass you take on a whim of, I hit third level, what am I gonna do, you know?
Yeah.
And to me, it really starts to lend certain game styles being starting at third level. So an example of this is Solomon's build, where Solomon's story, basically because I knew I wanted to go into Scout Rogue at third level, it wouldn't have made sense to take a proficiency in survival or nature, because I would have gotten the expertise from that class. And because of that, Solomon's first two levels didn't make any sense along with his story, because he's supposed to be this expert tracker and monster hunter, but he lacked all the proficiencies that would make that happen because he would be an expert at 3rd level at them anyway. So, you know, we kind of in Cloud Singer, it was funny because the dice just happened to roll in my favor, where I'd be like, hey, make a nature check. Oh, nat 20, look at that. But if it also wouldn't have made sense where, like, say I roll like a 9, oh, he got a 10 as his result, you know, even though he's supposed to be an expert, you know. So it is interesting. I don't dislike this design. However, it does warrant a conversation with the DM of what's going to make sense for my character's thing. I would almost like to see this archetype selection almost pushed to 1st level, so that way you can build into it instead of being like, you know, I'm really bad at talking until I hit 3rd level. Now I'm great at talking to people, you know? And now all of a sudden I have fairy magic. Isn't that great? Like, it, to me, there's a very weird dissonance between your character's story, their arc, their backstory, and then having to wait to hit these kind of like character defining abilities like a little bit later into their leveling progression. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this is where a conversation with the DM really helps to try to track what are you thinking? Where am I thinking of going? And then the DM can also create hints and choice points that can more organically give you those features. I think at one point we had discussed, or at least thought experimented about, awarding features as role-playing rewards. So you follow a track of possible features. I think it was actually a stem of one of our homebrew ideas. Instead of creating a whole new prestige class, you have this feature. And
right.
But as a thought experiment, instead of having at 3rd level you select this class or this archetype, to know that I'm interested in this archetype or I'm interested in this path, and then as they explore certain avenues, that it's almost like features as treasure, features as rewards for roleplay.
My only thing with that is it means that character can't be good at that thing at the beginning, you know? So like a fighter, when you have a 1st level fighter, they don't have to build to being good at dueling. You know, they don't have to work at it, and you don't have to reward them through role playing. They just get dueling at 1st level, you know? Or like a rogue gets sneak attack at 1st level. They're just sneaky and they're good at being a rogue. Whereas like this is saying like, you are the negotiator. You are exceptional at this task. So to have to like justify why you're getting good at it instead of like, because of this inciting incident that kicks off my character's story and why we're exploring it, this is why I'm beginning with this certain proficiency. Does that make sense? So it's just an interesting thing, and it's why I'm campaigning to have book 2 start at level 3. So instead of having to build to it, and you have your own things with that too, like where it's suddenly like, oh well, now their hit dice are a little harder. They aren't going to feel squishy for as long. So it's but that's the trade-off. And because we're all invested in the storytelling not being squishy, what value could it add to start with an archetype and then kind of build from there, you know?
Yeah, and if I did that, what I'd do is I have you be, and that's probably what I'll end up doing, maybe. It's not official yet.
No, right.
But if I did that, then because we do it in chapters, that we would start at level 3 so that everyone would have an archetype and very established in the world of what your connections are. There's a lot deeper. There's a lot more lore now that I've done mostly one campaign. Campaign 2 has a lot more stuff available, that we would take chapters 1, 2, and 3 at your level 3. So we take the time to move through the beginning reaches of the story, but without you being squishy. You can be a bit more powerful and a bit more resilient, so that you can establish those connections.
That's a relative term, because a level 1 character is squishy to a CR1 monster. A level 3 character is squishy to a CR5 monster, you know?
Yes.
So I think it also depends on how the encounters get set up and what the kind of challenges that those characters would have to face at that lower level, especially if they don't have a lot of equipment right away.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. But I think we'll have a more established people, like established jobs, established relationships, that will be a lot clearer and cleaner to establish if you're level 3 as opposed to level 1, and you'll be able to enact those features in connection in like direct relationship to the world. Anyway,
Right.
continuing
Dreadful
forward.
Strikes isn't even something we talked about yet. So Ranger's getting psychic damage.
Yeah.
And
And also making their weapons magical at 3rd level to overcome resistance.
True, and they get even more psychic damage afterwards in the next feat, which is pretty cool. So
Yeah, well, and this is where I have problems with fighter. Is remember when we talked even the psionic fighter, it
Yeah.
was 1 psychic damage per turn. This is 1d6 per hit. So now Rangers are suddenly a better DPR class.
Well, it's on a hit, but they can only get it once per turn. You only take the
unless you do
damage
2-weapon fighting. When you engage in 2-weapon fighting, you can imbue your weapons as part of the same bonus action. Oh no, you're right. I guess it would still just be once per turn. I still think that's dumb. Yeah, I think that because remember they also get Hunter's Mark on top of it.
True.
So they get Hunter's Mark each damaging thing. So you're now stacking Hunter's Mark on top of a psychic blasty kind of thing. And I do like that they call out 2-weapon fighting because that's an iconic fighting style to the Rangers' kind of legacy identity.
Yes.
And I don't think that they do that very often. I like that they finally admitted, you know.
Cool. At 7th level, you gain Blessings of the Courts. You have learned eerie techniques from both the Gloaming Court and the Summer Court of the Feywild. Once during each of your turns, when you hit a creature with a weapon attack, you can expend a spell slot to deal extra psychic damage. The extra damage is 3d6 damage, and the creature must succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or be frightened of you until the end of your next turn. In addition, whenever you make a charisma check, you gain a bonus to the check equal to your wisdom modifier. Huh.
Great.
Now,
Turns.
this supports even more the negotiator type mentality, because now you're combining your charisma and wisdom modifiers.
You're
Yeah.
using your wisdom to see through the BS.
Yeah. I think this is cool because if you get your Hunter's Mark and you get your Dreadful Strike on top of this, you do get kind of an effective fireball of psychic damage, don't you? Isn't it 5d6 for a fireball?
8d6.
8d6.
Why did I think it was? I don't know, but it's still pretty good. It's that, like, obviously you're not casting an actual fireball and it's not as strong, but it is for the class, for the type of character this is. I think it's a really cool, unique thing.
Well, and this now makes sense why the previous feature was once per turn, because based on the rules as written, you can use Blessings of the Court to basically smite with psychic damage, and then you can use the Dreadful Strikes, which is a separate feature once per turn, to do the second attack and hit with the second set of psychic damage. And the thing, all right, so I didn't like the Archivist because it had a smite mechanic. It could do a lot. The thing, and the damage amount was the same as a Paladin. Whereas this, the damage amount is different, and I don't think it stacks, right? It's just you expend a spell slot, and it does this. Like, it's not like if you use a higher level spell slot, it does more psychic damage.
Yeah,
So
a spell slot.
yeah, it doesn't devalue the Paladin, but it gives a unique choice to the Ranger. So that's the kind of design I really like. And there's a debuff added into it. There's that wisdom save to make them frightened. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I wonder, I don't know a whole lot about like Fae as monsters though, so I don't know how well that would work against the Fae. Do they have like advantage against being frightened or anything? Do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. Do you know, Adam? How often have you had them fight a lot of Fae creatures?
Yes. They don't really have a lot of advantage against being frightened, but they might have magic resistance or resistance to being charmed, which follows. Yeah. But in terms of the
Okay.
frightened thing, it doesn't come up as much when I'm working with at least the lower level Fae. Like higher
Yeah.
level Archfey often are immune to it, but the lower Fae, I don't think it actually comes into play.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right. At 11th level, you gain Beguiling Twist. You learn how to manipulate mind-altering magic, channeling it from your allies toward others. Whenever a creature you can see within 120 feet of you succeeds on a saving throw against being charmed or frightened, you can use your reaction to force a different creature you can see within 120 feet to succeed on a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC, or suffer your choice of one of the following effects. The creature is charmed or frightened by you for 1 minute. The creature can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns and end the effect on itself on successful save, or they take 3d10 psychic damage.
Ooh. So yeah, Rangers are not exactly known for being a reaction-heavy class, and most people that I see that tend toward Rangers do so because they want to be like an archer build. So I love the conditions because again it adds to the puzzle. So you have to watch somebody else succeed on a wisdom save, and then you basically get to redirect that magic to somebody else, and basically just the 3d10 psychic damage is the thing I really like. It only costs a reaction and the other condition has to be satisfied, as opposed to like once per long rest. So if you have an enemy creature that's really trying to spam wisdom save magic, like this is a great way of being like, haha, sucker! What a twist!
I like what you did there.
Psychic damage or charming them. That's wonderful. Yeah, I really like those redirections. And at 15th level, your capstone for this subclass is Misty Presence. You can magically remove yourself from one creature's perception. You gain a bonus action that you can use to force a creature you can see within 30 feet of you to make a wisdom saving throw against your spell save DC. On a failed save, the target can't see or hear you for 24 hours. The target can repeat the saving throw at the end of any turn during which you hit it with an attack roll, force it to make a saving throw, or dealt damage to it. The effect ends early if you use this bonus action again. On a successful save, the target is immune to this feature for 7 days. Once you've used this bonus action, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest, or until you expend a spell slot of 4th level or higher to use it again. Again with this must be a main mechanic they're trying out with all this.
Yeah.
Spend this spell slot of this level or higher, and you get this thing again.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I kind of, again, as long as they're establishing, there's not a confusion over is it magical or not. It's not something I'm against, you know? It's like, it's giving an extra way to use your spell slots, because some of these classes you wouldn't. Like, try to find a lot of ranger spells that don't require concentration, you know? They pretty much all do. So, like, you're basically picking which spell slot am I going to use this time?
Yeah.
And then don't use it again unless you're going to smite. I don't know. This to me is the ranger I would be excited to play.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you guys. Just the synergy it has with ranger's core spellcasting mechanics and the synergy it has with its own mechanics. I could see myself doing this, and I can't say that about a lot of other rangers. Other rangers, their action economy is too clunky for me to really.
But John, what about the bees?
We're not talking about the bees.
Not the bees. Not the bees. I'm
not excited about the bees one. I would be excited if it was a bee druid. I would be excited about it, but
you create a vortex around yourself, giving you a fly speed. No, but I can see this being really good actually with a combination of this ranger and the Circle of Stars druid with the wheel and woe mechanic. Like, I know this is at 15th level, but even at 15th level, I still find that a lot of the spellcasters I play, their DC, their spell save DC, it feels a little underwhelming against the larger like monsters, especially if you don't know what they're like good at. Like if they're good at wisdom saves or something. So say they roll like a synthetic 20 or something, then you could combine your Misty Presence with your party druid's woe feature and just knock that down a couple pegs, making it much more effective. Now I'm just talking about like party tactics, not like the actual subclass, but I think it would be really cool. That's for sure.
Yeah, I do love when UAs like this have at least 2 or 3 options that you can see can work together as a party. So I can imagine right now a Twilight Cleric, Star Druid, and Fey Wanderer being in the same party. Where, like, say the Star Druid starts following their map so much that they get lost in that weird in-between space where they're going to the Feywild, and the way that the party meets up is that they get saved by the Fey Wanderer, who lets them know that, you know, this is actually that the thing their star map is pointing out is a portal to the fairy realm. And you have the Twilight Cleric that navigates the space between the light and dark. And what I love most is when they're negotiating the balance in between two forces without a judgment towards either of them, or an equal amount of judgment towards both of them. So, like, being like, you know, people are people and people suck, you know, fairies suck, but somebody has to keep them all in line, you know? So I really, that's a very interesting character story that is being explored in a lot of different dimensions by the UA that's been coming out.
There's a lot of doors that are opening in going through these various subclasses. I love, like you said, John, the synergy. This is a ranger that I'm excited about trying out. I've already written down a couple notes for an NPC that would be really fun to flow through this. But there's a distinct flow. I'm not reading through any of these abilities going, it doesn't really fit. These all fit. They seem to track flavor-wise, and they track with mechanics. And when you have that synergy, it's very clear to see how this class could play out, and it's exciting because there are possibilities of luck. This is good. I want to play this one, and I would love to see it in play. So it gets my stamp of approval, no problem. But we're seeing a lot of that, of the various subclasses and the UA that are coming out, that they seem to synergize with each other just in the document. And then also there's an interplay that can happen between the various parts that have been given out. I really want to see a party or two of the subclasses, part 1, 2, and 3, and just see how there's an interplay there. Yeah,
so
very exciting.
Not to get anybody's hopes up, but one of the theories that has kind of floated around my newsfeed or whatever is that the November release, which tends to be like the big source book one. So Xanathar's was a November release, Eberron was a November release. They're gonna introduce a planar handbook, which is like basically, you know, you have Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes, but they didn't really talk about the planes a whole lot. They had a planar bestiary, and they talked about the races, like, you know, elves and drow, which isn't really what I was looking for. I like the blood war part, you know, but it's like the theory is that it's going to be a planar handbook that introduces these subclasses as basically like the things you find that are kind of weird but really cool if you do a lot of planar travel, and introducing Spelljammer mechanics. So basically the mechanics of traveling from world to world, which right now are honestly pretty vague if you were to go by rules as written or official content for 5th edition. There's not a whole lot which is like, hey, do you want to go to the Feywild? This is how you do it. It's absent. There's like, oh, you might find a portal, but like there's not like a chapter in the Dungeon Master's Guide dedicated to this is how you go. You get brief descriptions, and you have the legacy of Dungeons and Dragons to fall back on, but you don't have a lot of 5th edition material that would kind of give you a lot of guidelines and rules that were specific enough that you could work with them. You have to be very kind of creative and make up your own stuff as you go.
That the science of that travel was going to be one of the main upper tier features in book 2 of Grey Owls. Of starting to explore some of that.
Well, because remember, Spelljammer is planet to planet, so you leave the planet, and there's like Spelljammer had a lot of weird stuff. Like there was like a race of humanoid hippos that would attack you with like modern assault weapons.
Yeah, GIF.
Like they'd board you with blunderbusses and throw grenades in.
They're in, I think, Volo's guide or maybe Mordenkainen's.
It was in Mordenkainen. Yeah,
the GIF. Yeah, GIFF. Something like that.
Yeah, the GIF as opposed to the GIF. But there's an entire planet of Tarrasques where you learn that the one Tarrasque that's on the material plane was actually accidentally brought over as an invasive species from this entire planet of Tarrasques. And that's like they're like the dominant species on that planet. So there was a lot of weird stuff happening in Spelljammer. And even like the Nyogi, I think were originally a Spelljammer kind of monster. So it's exciting to think about, especially since, you know, we've gotten a little bit, Eberron is like the one legacy setting besides Faerun that's been ported to 5th edition. Other than that, we've gotten Magic the Gathering settings and Critical Role. So it would be kind of neat to see updated versions of D&D's legacy kind of ported to 5th edition, just to kind of expand your view of it, you know?
Yeah. That's going to be cool. I'm excited for that.
That'd be cool. And I think for Grey Owls, specifically in book 2, it's less jumping to planets and more that the astral sea is sort of space, and that's where the connections lie. It's a lot, and the astral sea is very dangerous when you have things like astral dreadnoughts and the Gith wars and the ships that appear in there. We're getting a little bit of cursory knowledge of that in book 1, but it's only really through one of the characters, and it's not even concrete knowledge. But that might be one of the avenues that one of the groups can begin to explore in book 2. And I've started making star charts specifically of how would you get there if you had like a physical ship that could move through the astral sea. Could you then get to the elemental plane of fire literally by physical travel? Is there a distance, a quantifiable distance to that? And that's a fun thing to explore because it starts to ground your world in more rules, like laws of science, even if the science is different.
Again, how much reality do you want in your fantasy? Like, you want it to, and that's a distinct style of play. There are a lot of people that don't want that. They want it to be mystical and they want it to be kind of abstract. I've always tried to kind of go the middle ground where the planes are but like the material plane follows a lot of scientific kind of study and stuff like that. Yeah. But
and as we get further in with all of our artificer options, there's the magic of artifice, which ends up being sort of the blend of magic and science, and starts grounding us in mechanical and steampunk rules. And so this is why another reason I like having IO in its many ages, because it opens the door for me to explore these different fantasy ideas that could have scientific grounding, but don't have to. And they can have my fantasy grounding. We might discover that the astral sea is kind of warpy and weird, and there have to be portals anyway, but maybe you can navigate it if you have the right tools. And there's a pseudoscience to that, but it doesn't have to be like space, space, because it isn't. It's fantasy.
Yeah, I've always liked the approach of the freedom of how seriously are we taking the story. In that, you know, is the idea that the narrator, me as the DM, is a drunk guy telling a story out of you know, so that way if something really wacky or out of place happens, our telling of the story could be misaligned from the actual events that get recorded, so that when all the goofy things happen, or, you know, if something doesn't really make sense, but I'm like, you know, it sounds fun, let's give it a try, and it kind of gets out of hand. Like the entire Monday campaign 2, like the official record is that it was a mass hallucination, that one of the demon lords got out and he had just such powerful illusion magic. It was basically like a trippy dream.
It felt like a trippy dream.
But it was still fun. it had its fun moments as
Yeah.
an experience of play, but in terms of a narrative and in terms of a hardcore story, it didn't really make sense a whole lot. And that way, if another player goes to like my Monday campaign right now, they made it to a library that had the records of what actually happened, and they were reading it. It's like, wow, it was basically a dream. Like that, so you can have that freedom of, is this like official or, and which parts are exaggerated versus what parts actually happened in your world.
Yeah.
I love that freedom as a dungeon master.
Yeah, that's really cool. I can't wait to be able to get into that. I mean, I sort of am already, just with the mini campaign. I've just taken the Strahd setting and changed it a few ways, and it's just, interesting to start making just a whole new like setting for yourself, your own personal setting. I like it.
Good. Your Strahd setting's stupid.
Oh,
No, it's fine.
feels bad.
I don't like the Death House. I think the Death House is dumb.
Yeah.
Let's dive into it. We've got time. So, because all right, this is for Ian, because now that we've been done with that, the Death House you ran for us, was that the same Death House that you ran for them?
It is in a way, but it developed differently. So the core idea with like the two children and just this cult or something in the Death House, that's all the same. The only differences were, for one thing, the well. I didn't have that in your mini campaign because I was like, I don't need that in my
don't get
life.
distracted by the well.
Yeah, like I don't need that. There was a well, but
something's up with this well.
There was a well, but that was it.
Like Ocarina of
water.
Time, something's up with the well.
just some water, okay. And then the other thing was the way that the final fight played out. So with the mini campaign, I had an NPC that isn't in the main campaign, really, or at least not yet. And then it was also the way that the fight ended was different. So with yeah.
It was really the design of the final fight that was different in the well, because I loved the Death House. I thought that was, I did. I thought it was a lot of fun. So I'm interested, Adam, what about the Death House seemed like rubs you the wrong way?
I think it has to do with the construction of that segment of the module, which is really, it's me grappling with the overall feeling of Barovia and of the Strahd setting, I think, because so the Death House is part of like the appendices in the module as a whole. So it's something that you can explore or not, and it's not part of like the main narrative. It's essentially a side quest. And say you do that early in the campaign, like first, but the thing with the Death House is, if you have a band of heroes, and the heroes act, in their case, heroically. They stop the cultists, they put the kids to rest, they defeat the shambling mound, and they stop the chanting, destroy the dais. They like do the things that are like, no, cultists bad, evil bad, destroy, done, okay. And then they go upstairs. The house turns on them. The house gets bricked up. The house, now all the doors are gone. There are blades in the doors. And it feels very like, oh, so we didn't do the right thing. We didn't. Now, I know why. We didn't play the cultists' game. So the house, because the house is a thing. It's not quite a living
it's like a
entity,
separate
but
entity.
It's part of that world. So it's displeased with us. But because of that, there's this weird feeling. It's very unsatisfying. And like for me, I think maybe, and in the style perhaps that Ian had presented it, I guess I was expecting a different outcome because we won, but we didn't. And
now after you got out of the house, is the house still whatever? Because that is an interesting difference, Ian. That didn't trigger in our campaign. We did the thing, laid the bones to rest. We knew that there was still evil in the house, but we like just left, right?
Now,
Yeah.
But we also didn't feel like heroes at the end, even
Now,
though we did the same thing.
This was an expectation thing from the other players as well, that we were walking around. Now the house is different. We came back upstairs after doing the blow stuff up, stop the chanting. It's not stopping. Let's sacred flame the heck out of it until it stops chanting. Okay, I think we're done now. And then we went upstairs and the house was different. So I did like an insight check, like, okay, we didn't play the house's game. Is there something else we need to do? We put the kids to rest. We must have done something wrong because now the doors are bladed. Now it's worse now. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
So we can't leave yet. We have to solve the other puzzle, when really we were just supposed to leave. So we had a lot of time with people going, oh, I investigate this. Oh, I investigate that. I investigate this. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know what to do.
So
what did we do
Can I
wrong?
tell you how our party solved it? Or I solved it. Because I was playing a Twilight Cleric. So the first thing I did was before we went into the house, because we knew it was bad Juju Magumbo, I made sure to prep detect good and evil. So that when we went in, if like the house got mad, it's like, all right, let's sit and ritual cast detect evil and good. Let's find where it's at. And then we consecrated the house. So we went out of our way to like be like, all right, well, the house is evil. Let's gather materials, you know. In your case, it would be, let's get salt from the pantry. Let's go downstairs, draw a circle. Let's do a ritual to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I think it speaks to the style of the world, because it's like in Gray Owls. If it's supposed to be a gray world, you're not supposed to be immediately rewarded just because you made a good decision, you know?
Oh, yeah.
So there might be more to it than that. So is the Death House still like desecrated in the Strahd campaign you're in right now? This is to Adam.
Adam can answer what he thinks.
I know it's not consecrated. We basically left. We murdered. One of our other players befriended the swarm of rats that appears in one of the doors, and then we sent those rats to their deaths to trigger all the bladed. I know, really, the bladed
Some
doors.
of them, yeah.
And then I think I was actually Viseria. It was my character that went, so is the door open? Yes, the door's open. We leave. And we left. And then I think I painted on the side of the house, don't go in. Blades inside. Bad Juju Magumbo. Don't go here. You know?
So funny.
I think
it's actually really funny because we consecrated the house and then we made it an orphanage for all of the kids.
And at the
in
time,
the town to gather.
I don't know if we had enough information to figure out how to consecrate the house. Like, we weren't sure what to do. So we were like, okay, I made a little note for my character. We're going to go back and either I'm going to burn this mother down or I will consecrate it and figure out when I have stronger magic, I'll consecrate.
The consecration was really just, I said, I'm going to consecrate it. And then I started making stuff up about the circles that I drew and stuff. And
which I was fine with. That was okay.
It's an interesting thing because, you know, that now speaks to the player style you have in this campaign. You're waiting for the DM to tell you what the answer is or give a clue that you can react on, right? As opposed to like telling the DM, this is my solution and this is what I'm going to do about it.
And I think that was very early on. We're only in session 4, I think, that we just finished. So there's a bit more of that learning the group and the group also learning the style of the DM.
Right.
And knowing that this is one of my mentor people. So I want to give them space to explore and recognize things. So really it's more my frustration with the module, but also I understand the style of Barovia, and I now understand that Barovia as a concept, as a setting, is really ticking off the party that is assembled, and it's ticking off my character in particular because they have no patience for broken people and they don't like the sad world. They're just like, get on it, guys.
That's an interesting thing. How would that have been different if that were established, right? Because it seems like there's a misexpectation of what you're going into.
It's very
possible. Like Strahd is supposed to be a gothic setting that is kind of sad. You know,
and so, I think we get that. I think the people that we're encountering, it could just be the luck of who we're speaking to,
Yeah.
are either the Vistani, who are very like creepy and sort of
Oh.
vague. Oh wait, go Ian, you're the guy, so go for it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to hear your perspective on how I'm portraying these characters because, to be honest, I felt that the last two sessions, session 3, where you defeated the house, and session 4 was less satisfying in a way because of the way that it just played out. So with session 3, there was a lot of circumstantial ruling that I had to do because of your solution basically to the house. And that just, I was like bogged down. I was like, I guess give me some damage, and I didn't think about what HP this inanimate object might have.
Right.
And
and I wonder
never...
if as that to make it so you have less work, if I don't know, and this is why I don't read through a module that I'm experiencing.
Right.
So if I read a section, we've already done that section, and then I'll go back and I'll read like what it says in the book, and then I can take note of what changes you made and all that cool stuff. But it's like in that case, we defeat the shambling mound, and then the chanting could stop, and then that tells us, okay, we don't have to blow anything up. But then if it doesn't communicate the story you want to communicate, I don't know. Like I think you did very well based on the random stuff we were pulling out. Because to me, it felt like you had a plan. It felt like you had something in mind that you were trying to communicate.
That's the goal.
Whether that was frustrating or not on either side is fine. It's just I could feel it from you that you were like,
Yeah, my frustration, I wasn't frustrated with you guys. I was just frustrated because I wasn't sure how you guys were seeing it, because people have these ways that they sit at the table or sit in front of the screen where they're just doing their own thing. They may be enjoying it or whatever, but I can't always tell what leveling of engagement they're at. So like if like the thing with the phone, right? So people look at their phones from time to time. All of us as DMs are like, please don't do that. It makes me feel like you're not engaged. But also, if the player is clarified that they are engaged when they're using their phone anyway, then it's like, well, I don't know how to feel about that anymore.
Yeah,
so
or like a lot of times I'll be looking something up on my phone. So the phone is actually a tool of engagement, even if body language wise it might be signaling something different, you know?
Exactly.
So,
and that's just the difficult part for me is figuring out whether or not I'm weaving a good story for my characters, for my players, from their perspective, because I know how I see it, because I wrote it. So it's like,
the interesting thing for Adam is you said, so are the players frustrated or are their characters frustrated? Because you can play an awesome dissonance there, where like Stephanie used to say that on Mondays about Shelley's character. She would be like, as a player, I love what you're doing from your role playing. From my character's perspective, I hate you.
And we had that clarification. Yeah. So Ian, you did a really good thing. You reached out to me and you're like, hey, what's going on with Viseria? And Viseria is frustrated. And that's the character. The character is frustrated with the world because she has no patience for people who are broken. And but that's something I'm also discovering as I'm playing her. Yeah. I'm discovering her flaws and her ideals in more clarity the more that I play. And then that comes out in really cool role-playing moments that are really awesome for me. They're really awesome for the party. They're really awesome for you. And then I get a lot out of that. So when you're like, oh, I don't know if that was satisfying for you, I'm like, I was very satisfied with that. That was great. That was a great interaction. I'm sorry it came off that way. But there's a separation between the character. The character is frustrated. I'm not.
Yeah, no, and that's good. That's reassuring to hear, actually, because when we were typing it, because we were just using Messenger, there is communication problems when you just type things because you can't hear the intonation. So
tone of voice.
I could see where you were emphasizing certain words and things. And I'm not saying you were doing anything wrong, but it is difficult to actually get the full scope of the message when you're just typing it. And when it came to, now that was the Death House, the Vistani character, I just didn't feel like I played it right. So what I was trying to do was I wanted to give you basically a realistic prophecy, sort of, not prophecy, but a reading. So the whole thing with the palm reading was that for those who are listening, I wanted to give the party something to go off of and build this tension that we've got going for the world as a whole, because it's only the fourth session. So to me, fourth session's like still in the early stages, trying to understand what's going on. But at the same time, and this is something I actually mentioned, or John and I talked about, when you have a monthly campaign, you need to take bigger steps to solidify at least that's what I looked at it as. You need to take bigger steps, action steps, to solidify the experience rather than making it a slow build as in a weekly campaign. So John always talks about it's the little things that build up to the big things. And that's why the weekly campaign is working very well, because I'm not just expositing the whole world's thing out all in one go, or I'm not like saying you fight this guy and you know who he is because he says his name or whatever. You need to go and figure out who this was, where he came from, all that stuff, and that's going to take time. And that kind of time is best, it works out best when you have the weekly campaign. Whereas if you're in the monthly campaign, you need to have those milestones to make it more rewarding for the players. Which is actually, ironically, we're talking about my shower thought here, coincidentally, I mean.
I figured we'd circle in,
Yeah, just making an encounter, whether it's combat or social, rewarding for the time spent and invested by the players and their PCs, because the PCs are always going to be some expression, whatever level you want, some expression of the player's own feelings and experiences. So it's just, and like I said, it doesn't have to be like, this is just me, but D&D, it can be like, this is an aspect of myself that I haven't really looked at because it's not in my nature. So I want to bring that forth into a character. So the reason that shower thought hit me was because of the interaction with the Vistana, because I was actually hoping to get a lot more out of her as like a valuable resource, basically, and a valuable NPC. Now, it doesn't have to be her. It can be another Vistana or somebody else entirely who's not even Vistani in lineage. But I was looking to make an encounter that would work as like a stepping stone to lead you beyond the village that you're in right now. And that just didn't happen because
instead Visaria like shut her down and then left.
Well, and now it's interesting, Adam, I have this question for you, because Ian and I had a little bit of a back and forth, just kind of like talking about Visaria and stuff. I'm curious, what do you see her arc being?
I wonder about because at the moment she's frustrated, and I think it has to do a lot with the setup of Barovia, like how you get to Barovia.
That was just an accident. I should have.
And
so because right now, from what you've told me and from what Ian's told me, she's an interesting character in that she has, right now, I would say her flaw is she has little patience for weakness. So that's like a character-based conflict. No matter if she's in Barovia or if she's in Faerun, it doesn't matter the setting. That's her character's conflict, right? Yeah, so what do you see her arc moving, like how do you see her almost like in 5 years or something, you know? How do you see like the experience being an interesting leverage point to allow growth for this character?
I think for her, it's going to be a journey to provide, to build empathy for the struggles of others, and for sort of a respect or an understanding for their own inaction, that people will be ready when they're ready to act. And instead, it might be more damaging for her to force people to take action when they're not ready. And probably actually, she tried to force someone into action that is probably not prepared for it. And Ian has mentioned it a couple times now, that I think it's going to be a barbed wire bat later, of her trying to do something good, because in her past she was empowered similarly by the deity she worships to overcome weakness, and to take matters into her own hands. But that doesn't mean that it was appropriate to force a person who is grieving and basically going crazy to go fight for her daughter. It's not appropriate at the time. They're not ready for that. But by giving her a weapon, and she's not in the right state of mind, that may have been a darker consequence
and
that Viserys is not prepared for.
The inciting incident that would start to spur change then. Because that's the other thing. That's what I find really fascinating is and this is how you find your best self through gaming. It's exactly what Ian said, which is each of these characters is a part of us, whether we like it or not, right? It might be something that we find empowering within ourselves, or it may be something that we're frustrated with ourselves, and it starts to manifest through that character. So like, and we talk about Cloud Singer episode 2, where, you know, Solomon stabs Everett. That's a John decision. That's not a Solomon decision, right? I did not do my character justice by doing that. You know, I also incorporated that as a thing, but now, because that part of me manifested itself, it is a Solomon decision. Yeah. I made it as a player, but it had consequences in the world. So that now became an inciting incident for Solomon's growth of patience. You know?
And we did the same thing with Mad Mage. I was very frustrated with Soren making a comment that I was like, oh, darn it, I would have known better. But now it's happened, it's canon, and it can be a part of his arc. And he's angry. I now have written down more little flaws in how he thinks, and these are going to be points of change for him to try to explore and figure out what is going on.
And I think that's the conversation, you know, is like right now, I'm not sure if the players are frustrated, if the characters are frustrated, or both with the setting, but that actually makes it the perfect setting for this, right?
Yeah.
Because now the setting is just an environment where you can have the conversation of like, as a player, why are you frustrated? Well, it's coming out this way as your player. Maybe this is an opportunity where you get to grow your skill as both a player, a character, and a person, or none of it. You know, it's just it's inviting a larger conversation about change that I think if you didn't have the conversation about identifying it, that would be what's leading to less satisfaction in play. And we talk about it with Grey Owls too. There are some Grey Owls chapters that were less satisfying than others. It doesn't mean they don't serve a purpose in the greater thing. You can be frustrated with the Death House, but really grappling with why, and then using that as a leverage towards your next experiences. You might play the first 4 sessions and be frustrated with it, but like you might play session 8, look back and see that even though you weren't satisfied with session 4, but they were the perfect foundational leverage that you now have getting extremely satisfying play by like session 8 or 9. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and it's interesting to me because when I first started this campaign, I was looking at it and I was looking at how many chapters there were, and I was like, oh, there's like 13 or something chapters. Sounds like 13 months, right? And then it's like, wait a minute, because we're still in the village of Barovia. Now there's like 2 or 3 other villages to go to if you want, and then there's also just confronting the main bad guy. And it's going to be interesting to see how this party changes over the course of like another year, maybe. I don't know how long this campaign is going to take. And I want to keep it going, which is one of the reasons that I spoke to John in the first place. I was like, can you just help me out and figure, I feel like I'm fizzling here. I don't want to lose this campaign because I'm a new DM and making these mistakes that everyone should make, because then you learn from them. But like also it's a long campaign. It's not like I started my DMing career with like a 1 shot or 2. I saw what you guys were doing, especially with John, with Adam's World. And I was like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
And I just dove right in, which again might have also been like a mistake, quote unquote, as a new DM, being like, let's do a full story.
I have a binding principle, if I can call it
I lost
that.
you guys.
I have a binding principle. John, can you hear us? John.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I think I finally caught up. We went like real fast.
Exactly
what happened.
like that. Perfect. I
Yeah.
love Zoom.
All right, so binding.
But the binding principle there is I've been thinking about this and thinking about this and thinking about this and why, because I don't think it's your style, Ian. I think we all really enjoy you as a human being and you and what you're presenting. I think there's two things. I think there's a storytelling thing that is from the character's perspective. They've been transported to this place. They can't leave because the fog will kill them. And they went to go stay in a house. Oh, it's haunted. Children are weird. They're creepy. Okay, that's a death house. Get the heck out of there. And then the next thing we're trying to do is just rest and figure out what the heck to do. So there was a point, I think, during the last session where you asked the party, so what do you guys want to do? And I'm sitting there going, Visaria wants to go home. And I know, like, Bronwyn wants to go home. Like, there are characters that are just, we were brought here against our will. Who do we need to punch in the face to go home?
Well, and you need to punch someone in the face is the other question.
Exactly.
Right?
There needs to be a question. And that might be a driving factor for now, like a driving motivation for now of, well, what do the characters want? If their perspective is they're here against their will, how do they get out? And that might be a singular thing for now that's a track. But then from that track, that focus, there can be branches of this side quest, that side quest that are also going to connect to whatever their flaws are, whatever their ideals are, and the ideals beyond just you have a cleric and a paladin in the party going undead bad, evil bad. More than that, want to go home. How do we get home? Because I think in Visaria's mind right now, she keeps hearing this Strahd fellow. Is Strahd the guy who can send me home? Does Strahd need to die so I can go home?
My other question is, has she asked?
And that I think is the next thing.
Because I think that's the disconnect that's happening is your character has a perspective and a goal, but there hasn't been an action. I don't know. I am not part of the table. But like from my understanding, there's not like she hasn't, it's not like she's gone to a bunch of NPCs and been like, hey, I'm not from here. I want to go home. How would I do that? And then that now leading to, there's not like a pursuit. There's a goal, but not a pursuit of it yet, which might be part of the frustration is the answers aren't just coming right now. You need to actually,
So we're also in session 4. There's a lot more time that can spill out. And there's a lot more time for Ian to flesh things out. And that's a good thing. I think that having that presentation, I only thought of that after. It was like, why am I so frustrated about that? Oh, right. Yeah. And it's only because I think one of our other players mentioned in her child voice, hey, we can't go home. Did everyone forget about that?
Yeah.
And that's also a product of a monthly campaign.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like she went, wait, the reason we're here is because we were transported here and that's not cool. And then she brought it up and I kind of went, oh, goodness. And that was near the end of the session.
To swing it back, that's a huge thing, right? Like I'm think how much more successful could I find Dragon Heist to be one of the most successful campaigns I've run, and how much more successful could it have been if we were able to at least back to back month to month, as opposed to we play 3 months later we play chapter 2 when everyone's forgotten everything, you know? So Dragon Heist, I felt in terms of delivering an experience was perfect month to month. Like there was a big enough thing that happened that it felt worth doing. But again, you can only get the slow world building and actually a lot of really in-depth character interaction if it's regular enough and appropriate enough. So it's interesting you mentioned that because in our mini campaign, which is I'm pretty sure the same setting. Like we're talking about a lot of similar things.
Yeah.
We didn't have that setup. Our setup was basically, and it's also really cool because Ian will do something with you guys. He'll go immediately with us and learn exactly from everything he had with your encounters. I have not had an unsatisfactory game yet. Every single thing is like, this is like the best D&D I've ever played. It's like what I'm getting out of it. And again, I'm getting the second run through too. So it's that you should be encouraged, Ian, that much growth happens that quick.
You're reflective. You think about stuff, dude. That's a good thing.
And it's interesting because we weren't forced there. It was, we need to investigate this house. He tied one of the PCs and is like, we hired a team to go investigate it because our acolytes keep getting disappeared, right? So getting disappeared.
Yeah,
but, so really, we had a clear objective, goal 1, go investigate the house and stop it. And then once we did that, we made our own objective. Well, this house is still desecrated, and we know that there's a continuing problem outside of this initial objective, that there's orphans on the street getting snatched up. So let's make a place to make to positively contribute to this community. And then from there it was, this random NPC that you introduced for us but not for their campaign, he's still out there doing bad stuff. Let's figure out why. So like we were able to make our own objectives, and because we were asking the right questions, we were then being pointed in the direction where it felt satisfactory, because it was basically like, do you know who this guy is? No, but the archivist would know. And then the archivist not only gives us the information, but a little bit of a clue of something bigger going on.
Right.
So right now, our entire group's, it's my objective, but the group is just kind of like, we got nothing better else to do, so we'll follow you, is to fix the temples of Mother Night so she won't be as mad, so she'll take away the mist. That's our group's objective, because I'm a Twilight cleric. I'm not here to judge the Morning Lord's church or Mother Night's church. I'm here to bring balance, right? So, and supposedly, based on the questions we've asked, the theory is that the mist is dangerous because Mother Night is angry that her holy places of power were disrupted or desecrated. So
emphasis
the
on
way
theory,
to fix,
by the way.
What happened?
Important to just emphasize the word theory, because
theory.
it's a great theory. It's just you give me some time.
Theory, our course of action is to go around and set back up these holy places and stuff. So we have a very driven objective that's very clear, with very clear action steps too. And I guess, I don't know if that's a player thing, a DM thing, or both, but just at the beginning of this session, mapping out action steps. What are we doing and why are we doing it? You know, because with one of those gray owls, that's the thing I had to keep telling Stephanie. You know, it was why are we doing this? Why are we opening doors? Why do we care? And it would take so long to resolve the simple action step, we would never get the purpose. But also, you could have a purpose and be like, DM, I would like to try this thing. But then if they don't give you action steps, you're like, well, then how do I do it? Like, what do I need to roll? Who do I need to ask? What do I need to do so that I can get what I need in order to feel like I have agency in this world? That I have a choice that matters, even if that choice has a certain cost to it, which may be time, spell slots, appendages, sanity. There's a lot. You know what I mean? And this is it's such an energizing conversation.
Yeah. Good. Absolutely. And just to tie that off there is that I really do see the value in asking questions. And I think just as a group, as a table, because it's monthly and also with everything else going on, a lot of the times this campaign is probably the furthest from our mind just because of the stuff going on. And that means that it can be hard to re-immerse yourself in the character that you've set up and the world that you've been experiencing for the past 3 months, because it's only monthly. So I'm not saying we should start doing it weekly or whatever. I think that would be too hard, but it's important to know what your character's goals are and then take actions to perform those goals. And that'll give me also something to work with. It opens up the dialogue between the DM and the player, saying, like how do I do this? What do I have to roll? Just like you said, and then I can actually really facilitate what you're looking for in a satisfying story, because that's my ultimate goal with this. I know it's like my first really big campaign, especially with 6 players. But I need, and especially switching to this format.
Right.
But I need for myself to have this experience, however much of a struggle it might be at sometimes, or however rewarding it is at others. I need it because it's right now the best way I'm learning, is in addition to the mini campaign. And it's just, I want to make it satisfying. I don't want it to just fizzle out or be like, people are like they start making excuses or whatever. I can't make it.
No, it's a valid fear. It's happened to my campaigns before, where all of a sudden nobody can show up anytime ever, and it just kind of stops, you know? It's not that it would happen with this group, but overall, as a DM, it's a valid concern.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I came to you, John, and I was like, help me. Like, what do I do? I was just going to say, I can't go to Adam because he's in the campaign. So I can't be like, hey, Adam, I have this NPC planned.
Like, why didn't you just talk?
Well, that's the only reason.
I get it.
To talk about like specific character stuff that he might be able to reveal as a secret. Which you can't do if you know what I mean? Like, it'll lose the dramatic reveal.
No, it makes sense.
So,
but I had that moment of, but, oh yeah.
But, I would say I do think having 4 players is a huge contributing factor in why the mini campaign is running so well. I think as soon as you introduce a 5th player, things start going off the rails, you know? So, and we have a nice blend of proactive and reactive players. We basically have 2 proactive and 2 reactive players. So 2 players that are like willing to work together to be like, well, what should our objective be? And then 2 reactive players that are cool enough going with the flow that they're not going to interrupt the experience to try to get their own stuff in edgewise. Because we've talked about that before. If you have all reactive players, now the DM, it feels there's such a drain trying to keep the momentum moving. But if you have all proactive players, and I really do think that's a Grey Owls thing, is we're all shouting over each other, trying to just get something done that nothing gets done. It gums up the works, you know? Yeah. So like when we, so because we have that really nice balance, and we're so small in number that we never have to take a lot of time to resolve everybody's stuff, because there's only 4 players to resolve stuff for. The flow has been able to keep up in a really interesting way.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see how this is going to turn out over the coming weeks and months, etc. Because I think, like we were saying, all the things that I feel like were mistakes in the Strahd campaign really come out and come alive in the mini campaign, which makes me sad that in some ways like that I can't show Adam directly, like, look, I did it. Like,
but no, this is good. I get to hear about this. This is cool. And what's cool about that you don't look at them as mistakes. What they are, they're extra choice points. They're an opportunity. So the fact that we were transported into this place, that's an opportunity to provide, and it's also an opportunity for us to ask questions. What it really is I'm finally immersed in things, and I'm finally starting to play Visaria the way I think I envisioned her. But in the first few sessions, I was just moving through the motions. I wasn't sure how I'm playing this. And also at the time, I'm just playing a game. This is neat. I'm going to sit back and be more quiet and just play. And now it's like I'm taking an interest in things, and that's also why these questions are now coming out, because I'm thinking about your campaign. That's a good thing. I'm thinking about it outside of playing it, which means if I have frustrations or I have things I'm pondering, it's because I care.
That's a really, really good point.
And so, but having that difference in, they're investigating a thing in that campaign, we were transported here against our will. What opportunities can that provide now in different hooks and choice points if we start asking those specific questions? Like how Bronwyn asked, hey guys, did you just forget that we're here and we can't leave?
Mm,
And yeah, we all kind of went, oh yeah, we forgot about that. And then we didn't ask anything after that,
yeah.
because that's also a product of immersion, trying to get back into things and remembering what we were doing, and then also trying to not overwhelm the DM. We want to be patient and
Mm,
work with you, but then
Yeah.
also we're going to play. And when I think when we're measuring those elements, there are different expectations that we're also trying to be kind and be patient, but we don't want to not play. But then when we do play, we don't want to send the wrong message, and sometimes that can make a choice paralysis for some people.
Yeah. No, I
But
get you
we're only
there.
thinking about this, and I'm only discussing and venting those things is because, hey, Ian, you made a campaign I care about.
That's really that means a lot to me because that's I mean that is like a big step towards accomplishing my goal of making it a campaign that is satisfying for everyone, including me, to run and play, because I want to impress my mentor basically. So it's one of those things. It's just and that's why it's ironic that I ended up going to John, because I was like, I can't let him know what's going on yet. Like I need outside input, and there's nobody who can help me. Like
Oh no.
but no, but like, not like really, like, because I can ask you generic questions, but I can't get into the specifics of like, how do I resolve this part?
Well, because I know, like, when I'm running a campaign and John's in it, John will discuss things with me.
I will.
Yeah.
And I won't tell him specifics, or maybe I will, but I trust that he won't use that information
Yeah.
to his advantage. He's just he's more informed and he can comment on it and
Yeah,
give me
absolutely.
pointers or perspectives.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is just giving perspective too, you know, because that's the interesting thing is like if it's the opposite, like let's say Ian had a lot of trouble with something that happened in our campaign and he like went to you, I would trust that your perspective would be in delivering the best experience for everybody, you know.
Yeah.
And especially with some of there were like really specific questions, and this is to compliment Ian. He was asking very specific story based questions of like, what do you think the effect would be if I did this instead of this, you know, and thinking through the action consequence kind of economy to storytelling. I think that it's nice that there's three of us, because now we can rotate through, because it's really cool when there's certain reveals as a player where it's like, oh man, that's like mind-blowing. And also it's good to check in with like understanding what each of your characters' goals are. So like that's why I come to you, Adam, and I'm like, this is Karama's goal. This is as a character what he's driven towards. These are ways he's thinking about accomplishing it. These are ways I've thought of a character of seeing this story resolving, but that might not happen, you know? And you can have a satisfactory game without it being mapped out, but at least you've gone through the legwork of mapping something out, you know,
Yeah.
giving an example of this is what I would find as a satisfying story, and also with the caveat that I trust that you'll also craft a satisfying experience, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's like the whole point really, is like the whole rest really just, respect, empathy, satisfaction, trust. And I just, that kind of has formed the template for how I want to be a DM. So yeah, I wrote it in chat. I just hope that we can continue to have these conversations, not necessarily recording it or whatever, but it was nice to have it on the recording, because then I can look back at it later when I'm like, what am I doing again?
Yeah.
Because yeah, exactly. So thank you so much, guys, for having this little talk with me.
And that also covers everything, at least in terms of that. That was one of my shower thoughts. I was trying to figure out how to broach it, but then we just jumped, so we're good.
Oh, well, wait, can I hear what the topic was? Just because we talked about it and we got the meat of it. I'm just curious, like, what the packaging looks like.
The packaging was, I myself was frustrated in the construction of the appendices of the Strahd campaign. I don't like the construction of the Death House because it tends toward like breeding the sense of dissatisfaction with players. because they feel like they achieved the right thing, and then the house tries to kill them.
Well,
And
yeah.
but that's also a style of Strahd. It's part of the setting. And I think if it was more of a timing thing, like if that's the first thing they encounter, if they're not fully into the idea of this is how this world works, sometimes that can be frustrating because they're like, what did we do wrong? But then they can come to realize we did the right thing. It says the house is evil. And
Yeah.
and that's also part of the flavor of the setting of Barovia, that there's a lot of darkness and evil going on there.
So just to put an end cap to that thought then, because we
it
talked a lot
had to
about
do
evil.
it had to do with consequences, like choices.
Right.
Did our choices matter because the house is still evil? It was evil when we entered, it's evil when we exited, even though it is actually different.
What that's pointing to now is follow through. So like it's you solved a part of the house, but you may not have solved the whole puzzle. You may have solved an immediate puzzle, but there might be something extra you can do if you want to go back to the house or research in it at like the town library or something, to see if there's something extra you can do. Because I actually I'm in the opposite boat right now, I'll admit, where I actually think that's super cool that you did the right thing, but there's a bigger thing going on that still hasn't been resolved yet.
Yeah.
So it now begs the question, what do we need to do to resolve this? So, and it may not mean this trip. We may have to exit the house because now we got more information. We realize it's not just the ritual. The house itself is evil. So now that we know that the house itself is evil, what tools do we now need to make the house not evil or to solve this bigger problem? So it may mean asking an NPC. It may mean going to a library. It may mean, and the DM may have like like for us, it was an NPC we saved. We saved an NPC from the ritual, and he was our information thing to our next lead, Yeah. So to me, it's only unsatisfying if there's no answer, right? But the fact that the house was still evil isn't the thing that's frustrating. It's the fact that you don't feel like you can do anything about it, which may be a presentation thing, or it might be a player thing, As a player, if you're like, well, if that wasn't enough, how much more work do I want to put into this? So which is now an interesting calculation you're making. Is it worth it to consecrate it? Is it worth it to put more stuff in, or do we just are we good with this location and we want to move on to the next thing because our eventual goal is to go home?
Right. And I think revisiting Visario would like to go back and burn the house down or do something to make it safe, because it's not safe, and that's a problem for her. But I think when we left the house, we were done with the house, and I wonder if we needed to have something else expressed either from our end as players or like just hinted to us that says we can do something else, because that's maybe why it was, to me, dissatisfying. We killed the bad things. We put the kids to rest. Oh, it's still bad. What did we do wrong? And it's
to
that.
me, it was nothing. We didn't do anything wrong. It just meant there was a bigger thing.
There's a bigger thing at work.
A really interesting follow-up session. So even though Death House as like the module was done, it became a bridge to a larger conversation, which ultimately led us to an even bigger objective of solving the mist. So I think it has, again, it's a follow-through thing.
Just as the last bit, because I know we got to go. But
we gotta go.
This was really great. So, but the last thing is just that I do think that the presentation of the module, or the part of the module anyway, may have contributed to that sense of dissatisfaction. Like we were saying, the module or the appendix of the house, I think it's a cool concept, but I do think that the presentation may have affected the party's views on the house, especially with the way that we initially resolved it, where there was a whole bunch of circumstantial stuff. And then it's like, okay, you did all that cool stuff and you broke a thing, which is great. But the altar. But then it's like, okay, now the house is still evil, so you have to like get out. And I just think that the fact that it took all session almost to just kill the house before getting out probably just made it very exhausting, where it's like, I don't want to be in there anymore. Just screw the house. I don't care anymore.
Yeah,
and that's not what I want. But
yeah, I got the sense from I got two of the other players. They're like, "Are we done with the house? I don't know. Or can we just leave the house? Are we good? Like, what? Can we leave the house now?" And I think we can just try go through the front doors, guys. Send the rats first. But I think also
difference. When you guys did the house, what level were you?
They started at 1, and then they progressed to 3 at the end.
Okay. We were 5 going in, and it led to some of the most exciting combat ever. Like, there was one of them where it was like, roll initiative. It was a Spectre. I rolled a guiding bolt, got a nat 20, and evaporated it in one shot. And it was just bang! So when it came to the Shambling Mound, that was a super exciting fight because there was a CR5 NPC, there was the Shambling Mound, and there were 13 shadows. And it started with me going, Spirit Guardians! And the shadows never hit any of us because they couldn't come in the 15-foot radius, or again, they just evaporate because they're vulnerable to radiant. So it was literally just like everything about it was so exciting, but again, it was because we started at a higher level. We had more tools available to us. So
I'm just laughing at Adam's reaction. He's like, "I want to be there," like, because I just took
sounds like a really good fight, guys.
It was
like a lot of fun.
Yeah,
really dynamic, and we had role playing inside of the combat because Stephanie went down and she had a dream sequence, and like Patrick was our hard support healing. I'm rubbing it in at this point. A gallon of salt that I bought at the store so I could consecrate the house with a circle. So it was such a, I don't know. I like the Death House, and I wasn't even done with the Death House by the time we evaporated the shadows. I'm like, I found a base of operations. So,
sounds great.
And that just goes to show.
Good time.
That just
it was
goes
an awesome
to show
time.
How well I learned my lesson with the first run of it, because I knew how I thought it was going to go, but I wasn't sure how it was going to go for my players. And when that happened, I was like, okay, how about this instead? And then and of course they're level 5, so they can take it. So I of course I didn't just have them like in the first part of the house. This is the last thing. In the first part of the house, you guys meet the Spectre. There's like a suit of armor. There's a freaking broom that attacks you or whatever. And it's like, okay, level 1. I don't.
Wait,
you guys
what
might have
happened?
missed the suit of
Were
armor.
those things not there in your campaign?
There was a broom. Okay, and I think you just don't remember because it was like 4 months ago. But
I don't remember fighting a broom.
It was. I think somebody else was fighting the broom before you got
I thought
there,
it just fell over, and we were like, "Oh, that's weird."
Oh, well, that's
and then
my
we
bad.
smashed
then,
it or something.
Yeah, because it was an animated broom, so it attacked you guys. Anyways, so the stuff in the top part of the house was like still the same. The lower part was where I was like, I need to rebalance this because it's going to be too easy, and it was. It still was pretty easy until they got to the last fight, which is actually a really great build-up.
So much fun to be, that like overpowered and be like, this Spectre could be bad if I didn't have a guiding bolt. It was. It changed my view on guiding bolt, because if you crit with a guiding bolt, you roll as much as a fireball. You roll 8d6 radiant.
Yeah, exactly. And that was just like. Then I got to them. So all these little build-up encounters were super easy, no problem. They get into the final boss counter, and it's like 13 shadows, like I said, and which don't ever touch them because Twilight Cleric, and then Urgus Cleric, and then Shambling Mound, and then also this NPC who's intelligent, who finally realizes that Cleric is stopping his shadows from doing a thing, so he goes and beats them up. Like it was really cool.
This sounds like a great time.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
We're gonna discuss more. Don't worry, but we gotta go. It's time.
I think we've been going.
Right, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of the DM Shower Thoughts. You can find us on the YouTubes every Sunday. correct? Sunday for DM Shower
at
Thoughts.
9. Yeah.
And then my blog on Saturdays and Tuesdays now on AdamusBreakProductions.com over at the GM's Corner, as well as all the Grey Owls fictions. And this podcast will upload on Podbean every Friday at noon, and then later on the YouTubes the next following Wednesday, especially with our archive. Have a wonderful day, and please game responsibly. Bye-bye now.